Idoneth Deepkin, Part 1, Propaganda. Long ago and long below, in ocean depths of Hish, so black that light wasn't even yet a fairy tale, a new race was born. The elven god Teclis set to fashion himself a people in his own image, and one of ghostly memories from his former life. But he had only just awoken in this new realm. The smell of Slaanesh was still in his mind, and the dark sea's pressure was stifling. The luminant and sagacious elves of mountain peaks and sunlight he would perfect millennia later were not, as many assume, his only creation. The firstborn were tainted, and a failure of his ego. In this prehistoric abyss he made monsters, and when he saw his mistake, he cast them away and left the seas, never to return. The Idoneth Deepkin are an abandoned race, cut off from their creator half-finished, thus weakening their souls and causing the very concept of isolation to fill the void. At more than a dozen paces, their forms are insubstantial heat shimmers. Their existence lives only in the short-term memory of those who interact with them, to be quickly forgotten, as their father has. The point at which they deserve pity has long since passed, however. This is not a redemption story. These are cursed and wicked soul-stealing vampire pirates with psychic erasure mind magic and limited invisibility. In other words, the nightmares of order. The majority of them are eyeless and pale, as such things were hadopelegically unnecessary in the ocean depths. Souls are power, and souls are station. Basic thralls have perhaps half of a soul, but the more powerful Deepkin have devoured so many that their cup overfloweth. Their high king of the deep, Volturnos, has lived such a Razal Ghulian life, stringing hundreds of souls and lifetimes together, that he claims to remember the face of Teclis when the god first made him in the Age of Myth. The look on that face was not a loving one, and Volturnos' mood has not improved in the last few thousand years. In times of great need, their soul scryers and tidecasters harness the power of hatred and ancient betrayal to summon an edgelord supreme avatar of soul energy called an Eidolon. Majestic dark saints with elven scale mail, harpoon kusarigama, and a living typhoon as a cape. Enemies who face one in battle will not only lose their lives, but their very souls, and they will not be remembered. Part 2, Models. Idoneth Deepkin models are largely outstanding if you like the idea of pushing creativity perhaps a little too far, but then also that's kind of what AOS is all about. For some reason, the default color scheme is paradoxically bright and colorful, which does make sense for many of their deep-sea mounts and creatures, but it is more than a little bit antithetical for such a dark and cursed race. But then again, they're an order army that is unequivocally evil, so maybe that duality is part of the theme. So let's start highest current soul volume with the Eidolon of Mathlan, Aspect of the Storm. He's a 12-inch flying non-monster with 12 wounds and a 3-up save, 2-up on turns 1 and 5, and in cover and under Abyssal Darkness. He can vanish immune one phase of attacks once per game with Cloud of Midnight, which is the artifact that might as well be printed on his war scroll because that's what you take every time. Foot heroes that try to duel him are at -1 to hit. You reroll 1s to wound with friendly models within 9 of him, including himself. He rerolls 1s to hit with his 4 Ren 2 damage 3 spear attacks, and all 8 of his attacks are in some combination of 3s and 2s or 2s and 3s. And when he charges, he heals for D3. And he doesn't chart because again, he's not a monster, although he probably sounds like one. Slight problem, he's way expensive for what he does, and he has no mortal wound protection, so he will die in 1 round to them, after the cloak is spent. I've seen people play him anyway, and I don't blame them at all. I mean, look at how sweet he looks. It's just you're bringing a 1900 point army to a 2k fight. But that's fine, just win anyway. There's also a caster version called Aspect of the Sea, but his level of badness is so high that you can't even justify it because of how cool he looks. I mean, you would just take the Storm instead. The caster version's spell ranges are cripplingly short, and he's even more expensive despite being worse. I don't know. Next up is Most Souls Lifetime Achievement Award in Volturnos. He has an incredible 14-inch flying move, 8 wounds and a 3-up save. Good attacks on 3s and 3s, Rend 1, D3 damage. 6s resolve at Rend 5, which is actually really sweet. It's better than mortal wounds half the time. He has a 3-up spell ignore shield, lets Achelian units within 18 reroll 1s to hit, including himself. A nice little impact hit on the charge for D3 mortal wounds, and his command ability is game-changingly powerful. But only usable during exactly Battle Round 3, and only if he is the general. This means that Volturnos is required as general in basically every single situation because, his command ability is too fun to pass up. Up to 3 units within 18 get +1 attacks with all melee weapons, and you can stack this as many times as you have command points for. Big combo. So you and your opponent get a minigame every normal game. Opponent needs to kill an 8-wound hero before turn 3 or it's go time. There's also a vanilla hero version called Achelian King. They have a Ren 2 bladed polearm that's damage 3 on the charge, and all of Volturnos' abilities except for the spell ignore, rend proc, and their command ability only targets 1 unit per activation instead of 3. But kings are cheaper and can hold an artifact, so really your mileage may vary. Isheron Soulscryer is a strong enabler hero, able to bring up to 2 other units with him for a board edge ambush. He also adds +3 inches to charge rolls to help them roll those 9s. Never leave home without one. Then there's Isheron Soul Render, who looks sick first of all, and can bring some of your Namarti foot models back to life at the end of your Battle Shock phase. They have to stay wholly within 12 of him even when returned, which makes this ability much more awkward than it should be, and nearly invalidates the entire strategy, since their base sizes are so big. He's part of kind of an odd man out half of this army that supports a half-finished horde strategy that doesn't quite pan out on the table, sadly. Tidecasters are cute, and have a great little War Scroll spell. Casts on a 7 and target unit within 18 is at -1 to hit, and at the start of your next hero phase takes D3 mortal wounds. Don't forget. She also negates the first normal wound that she would take each turn. And she has a game-changing ability if she's your general, which I'll explain later in the playstyle section. Rounding out the heroes is the living meme himself, Lotan. A model so beautiful that you'll want to buy one and paint one, even if he's useless. He's not a caster, no command ability, bad attacks, fragile, can't hold an artifact, and lets you reroll 1s to hit with your Namarti if they're wholly within 12. He's not good, but every list is allowed one pet choice, and he costs almost nothing. For standard battle line we have Namarti Thralls, and breaking from the norm for a moment, these are decisively not the bedrock foundation of your army, like I think every battle line I've talked about so far is. They are 5-up save clan rats on big 32 mil bases, so they can only fight 1 rank, and you only get 10 of them for 120 instead of 20. Their combat profile and weapon stances seem cool, but base size and short reach means their offense is never great, and their tissue paper armor means they fall over. Idoneth Deepkin is a book that turns many traditional rules of thumb for AOS armies on its head, and this is one of those ways. Usually it's your horde of cheap battle line that screen your elite units. Here it's the opposite. The elite Achelian Ishlane Guard are your screens, and conditional battle line with one of the 2 kings as general. They're super fast elite cavalry at 14-inch flying, just like the kings, 4 wounds a model, 4-up save, and 3-up save if they charge that turn. Their attacks are not good, but that's okay because they're screens. They can reroll Battle Shock and reroll charges from banner bearers, and they are immune to rend. Not bad at all. For offense eels you have Morsar Guard, with mostly the same stats and wheel as the Ishlane, except they get Rend 2 damage 2 on the charge, which is big, and they have a once per game biovoltaic shock, where you roll a die per model in the eel unit, and target enemy unit within 3 takes a mortal wound for every 3-up. For each 6 they take D3 mortal wounds instead. It is Morsar Guard that are the bedrock foundation of this Battletomes armies, but you always need to get the charge. They are very bad at grinding when they lose that Rend 2 damage 2. For modeling tips, please don't use the plastic flight stands, they look like garbage. Have them flying next to ruins and stuff. As an alternative to attack eels, you can take Achelian Alopexes instead. They have similar damage output for the points, but are slightly slower, don't count as battle line, are worse at capturing, don't have a big mortal wound shock that your army really needs, and can't reroll charges for free. On the plus side, they do give you some ranged attacks, and don't need the charge to do good damage, so this is nice. Honestly, what do you like the look of more, eels or sharks? That's probably your answer. You also have a shooting unit, albeit one with very short range. Namarti Reavers, which can be battle line if you have an Isheron hero, which you won't. They're pretty fast at move 8 with reroll runs, a 5-up save, and very weak bows, at 1 attack, 4s and 4s, no rend, 1 damage at 18 inches. If they're within 9, they get 3 shots, but still no rend, still 4s and 4s, and that's really close, so still not great. Finally, you have a double-decker centerpiece battle barge monster turtle. Achelian Leviathan is a non-hero monster, and you know how I feel about monsters that can't take traits, artifacts, or use command abilities. None of them are competitive across the entire game except for maybe one exception, and it isn't this guy. Is he competitive? No. But is he better than 310 points of eels or sharks? Still no. But he's totally playable, and that's the excuse everybody who loves this awesome sculpt has been waiting every points drop every year to hear. He's got 16 wounds and a 3-up save, 12-inch flying, and Void Drums in a 12-inch aura that grants cover to other units, although you already get cover on turn 1 and turn 5 and from a spell. He has 6 poor damage but good range shooting attacks at 24 inches, some nice Rend 1 damage 3 scything fins, and a bite attack that would be exciting except it only has 1 attack. So overall, Idoneth Deepkin have a lot of super creative models, but unlike Cities of Sigmar or Skaven or Luminath, IDK is not at all a Neapolitan army. You're one of those Beastclaw Raiders, Slaanesh, or Sylvaneth style armies where they intended for you to play a certain way, then messed up writing most of your war scrolls real bad. So you only have 1 or 2 good ones and you just spam them unless you love losing. I would not recommend hopping on board an army with the intent of hoping for future changes to suddenly make everything you like more viable. This is a recipe for grumbling online for years wondering why your alternative pet list is passed up every GHB. This is a battle tome that throws a birthday party for people who love electric eels, soul kings, and sharks. If that's you, here's your party hat, it's going to be a blast. If that's not you but you're 100% beer and pretzels, welcome aboard, but don't say I didn't warn you. Part 3 Playstyle. Idoneth Deepkin is RKO out of nowhere fighter jet Alpha Strike. They are the premier Alpha Strike army in Age of Sigmar. Many armies are capable of it, a few can do it competitively, but hail to the king. You mess up the opponent's initial deployment by putting shipwrecks in the way, are very high drops so you have a chance to see exactly where their units will be in deployment to counter position against them, deep strike ambush 2 units right in their grill, fly over the chaff lines, and sink Rend 2 damage 2 fangs into whatever target priority you've decided will ruin everything if it dies immediately. Finish off wounded stuff with EMP pulses and start zooming around the board with 14-inch flying MSU squads ready to harry, countercharge, or zone against the crippled enemy force. Essentially passing time until turn 3 high tide to deliver the coup de grace. There's little room for error in an IDK army since your defenses are so weak, and you really need to know the workings of your opponent's army to deploy and target correctly. If you guess wrong or they have a good counter strategy, your board position quickly turns into spaghetti that not even high tide can clean. For allegiance abilities, let's start with the most powerful one, the Gloomtide Shipwreck. While friendly units are wholly within 6 of it, they get a 6-up ward, and while enemies are within 3 of it, in your hero phase they take D3 mortal wounds on a 4-up. Now this might seem weak, and for sure it's basically useless and you don't even need to remember both of those effects, and they'll never affect the outcome of the game. IDK is for tacticians though, and the 2 shipwrecks you can place are big, and you set them up after you learn who deploys on what side of the table. So you use them to herd your opponent to deploy where you want them to, or to block off where they want to set up. You also have the Tides of Death, which give your army special bonuses depending on which battle round it is, that wonderfully mimic in sequence the swell and crash of a wave. Round 1 you have cover, round 2 you can run and charge, round 3 is high tide, which lets your entire army fight at the start of both combat phases. Round 4 you can retreat and charge, and round 5 you again have cover. A clear progression of tactics that makes sense, a powerful effect but delayed so the opponent has time to plan for it, and flavorful. Some of the most brilliant rules writing in AOS, in my opinion. You also have Forgotten Nightmares, which limits the opponent to only being able to target the closest visible IDK unit with shooting attacks. Spells are still fair game, so this is sometimes useful, sometimes not. Finally, you have Rituals, which are weird, and almost never matter. One hero more than 9 from enemies may roll 2d6 at the start of your hero phase. If they get a 10 or higher, you can rob your opponent's entire army of flying for a turn, otherwise it fails. So it almost never happens, and most of the time they can't fly anyway, but once every 5 games or so, you hamper their positioning for a turn out of nowhere. Again, weird. Then you pick an Enclave, which are like mini sub-factions. They give relatively minor bonuses, but they're good, and they have cool flavor, so check them out. And most of them don't cost anything. For command traits, Voltanos is almost always your general, but if you want a king, you have some decent options like +2 wounds, or +2 attacks on the fun turn, or reroll runs and charges. You have a huge number of artifacts, and they're all weird and bad. However, let me introduce you to the glory that is Cloud of Midnight. Once a game at the start of any phase, you can vanish immune all spells, attacks, and abilities for that phase. You can't be targeted by any of it, but you also can't do anything either. Very useful on the closest target for shooting to essentially force the opponent to skip that shooting phase due to how it interacts with Forgotten Nightmares, or to keep your hero alive if charged when trying to stall until turn 3. For spell lores, you're no slaves to darkness or Skaven, but you have some functional choices. Steed of Tides is a hero-only teleport, though the range is capped at 24 inches. Pressure of the Deep can slay a small model outright, though it has a short range, and Abyssal Darkness radiates a 9-inch aura of cover. They're okay, but your Tidecaster's War Scroll spell's pretty good already. Speaking of Tidecaster, remember I said I'd talk about her secret trick later. Well, if she's your general, which is never the case because Volturno stacking combat juice is too fun, and Eel Battleline are way better than Thralls, but if you dare to be bold, and make her the general, at the start of the first battle round, you may choose to reverse the Tides of Death. This means round 1 is retreat and charge, which is maybe a little awkward, but round 2 is already the big combo for High Tide. Round 3 is then run and charge, round 4 is cover, and round 5 is retreat and charge again. Essentially, you give up a stronger High Tide for a much faster one. If you aren't in love with eels and you kept watching this video anyway, and if keeping an 8-wound hero alive for half the game or everything is ruined sounds annoying, this is the general for you and all of your shark friends. So what does this all mean? Well, you hamper their deployment with shipwrecks, and further hamper their deployment by putting some killer units in the Ether Sea, which obliges the opponent to turtle up with tight screens. Then you spread out across the battlefield with speeds that rival teleports every movement phase, and start scooping up those objectives while your opponent is still cramped, having been ambushed by a bunch of eels or sharks to surgical strike key targets and mostly just lock them in combat in their deployment zone. After that, it's hold on for High Tide and get in as many fights as you can for it, since you're attacking with everything at the beginning of combat anyway for both turns. The intended playstyle, as far as I can tell from rules and war scrolls like AoE cover turtle, short range penalty to hit wizard eidolon, regenerating thralls, short range low damage reavers, is of a comparatively slow come get me style passive troop spam Death Star, with 1 or 2 cavalry for flanking. A lot of this army seems like it wants you to copy OBR's playstyle, except with none of the durability or ranged, so it doesn't work at all. Luckily, you have perhaps a few accidental war scrolls and rules that give access to a much better and certainly much more fun alpha tempo full cavalry strat. Part 4, Stats. Offense A+. Your damage technically isn't quite A level, as Ren 2 damage 2 on the charge is good and everything, but you don't have a huge number of good attacks, and when not charging, your damage drops quickly, and your access to mortal wounds is very limited to once a game. During High Tide with Volturnos, juicing people up, you can hit S tier of course, but what really brings you up to A+ overall is your incredible ability to put damage exactly where you want consistently. Fly over chaff screens, 14-inch movement, re-rolling charges for free, deep strike ambush with +3 to charge, sometimes run and charge, once a game shock to give you some mortal wounds that might otherwise be lacking, and fight first with your whole army in round 3. Defense, it varies wildly, but overall C- pretending to be B-. On the table it sometimes seems like you have great defense. Since your hero Cloud of Midnight vanish immunes the first time he might die, you're mostly immune to shooting, but they will kill something. Your best hammers start the game off the table, electric shock can soften incoming damage if you get caught, turn 1 you have a cover bonus to armor, and on turn 3 you're at least getting all your damage in. But all of your protections are a gimmick that either only works once or can be ignored or brute forced or played around. Your thralls have tissue paper armor and 1 wound, so they die as fast as clan rats, except there's half as many of them. Eidolons melt in 1 round to mortal wounds, and eels have decent armor and wounds but are elite enough to end up fragile anyway. Sharks even more so, and the monster keyword hurts them. It's a roller coaster. Positioning S. 14-inch flying base on your eels and kings, 12 on your sharks, double ambush, charge bonuses, free charge rolling, sometimes run and charge, sometimes retreat and charge, 10 to play an MSU for wide area coverage that helps in 6 objective battle plans. Your positioning is so good that it's carrying your offense and mechanics up to the high grades they get. Mechanics A. Shipwrecks, Tides of Death, double ambush, shocks, forgotten nightmares, and even the once per 5 games flying ban on enemy units, all combine to change the game when playing against IDK if you're a certain type of army. The sickest flying alpha strike with a bandolier of gimmicks is a strong counter to the otherwise top dog type of army in AOS. The strong synergy powerhouse buff collection of silver bullet war scrolls that is armies like Cities of Sigmar, Skaven, OBR, even Tzeentch have a real problem not losing to IDK before they have time to expand a little and start revving up those power pairs. Part 5, Notes and Target Audience. List building wise, your strategy is Alpha Strike as Plan A, but don't leave yourself high and dry if that's not what's needed or practical for a particular matchup. Make sure you are still able to zoom around playing tempo and objectives well. You don't need to run 24 eels or your garbage, that's a meme. But you definitely do want something like half of your army to be cavalry of some sort though, because, well, you're a cavalry army. Thralls, Reavers, Turtle, Tidecaster, these are your support units that can hold some objectives and let your eels and sharks run wild and free. Sometimes your opponent is just as nimble and deadly as you are and gets to go first. Sometimes you bounce off of Hearthguard Berserkers and then just die. Sometimes the enemy piles in and attacks after they die, so everything is a trade instead of a win and you get blown out of the water. But this is an army for pirate captains of the high seas, with a fleet of lightning submarines at their command. Your creator failed to give you souls, so you take them. He gave you no purpose, and so you carved one out. First you took the seas, and you vise on shore. Audible footnote. If the aesthetics aren't for you, but you like the playstyle of Super Alpha Strike tempo, consider Boulderhead Maw Tribes, Auric War Clans, or even certain Nighthaunt.